All right, guys, we're back here at Papadakis Racing. Steph has the new motor plate all designed in CAD on his computer, so we're gonna go check that thing out before the program gets emailed off to OMD and Ferrari Steve down in San Diego to get cut on their CNC. Let's check it out. Steph!
What's happening?
What up?
I got your motor plate already brought up, so we can go talk about that.
That thing looks sweet!
Yeah, so the CAD program we're using is called SolidWorks, and what we do is we start with the roamer arm, and we need to find out where all the bolt holes and the different features on the block are kind of in space. And let me go backwards here. So all these different points are the bolt holes and the different dowel pin holes on the JuddV motor. So we'll start with just all of the bolt hole locations, and then we'll go, and I actually took a picture of the engine, and I can lay that over.
Whoa.
Yeah, so if you look, the points are still here. I mean, it's not perfect, but just to get an idea of what the motor plates kind of look like and if there's anything that I gotta watch out for.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then I've added now the extra bolt holes for the bell housing. Bell housing bolts, and then bell housing bolts plus JuddV motor bolts. So now we know where all of the hardware is gonna go. And then I also took a picture of the bell housing. That's the bell housing.
And those are all the points drawn on that, yep.
Yep. And again, it's not perfect. It's just to get an idea, mostly for styling in a way. Yeah, so this is now the outline of the motor plate. But there's no features in it yet. It's just an extruded piece with a shape.
Yeah, there's no pockets in it yet. It's basically just
right, and that's built from a sketch that I do. So this is the sketch based on all of the different points in space, and then just start making a elegant shape that makes sense, that clears any kind of features on the engine. So once you get your sketch done, then you, what they call extrude it, you turn it into an actual solid. On the left here is our tree. That's our build tree. So every time we add another feature, it adds another element to that tree.
Cool.
Eventually, we put the holes in it. So now we've got holes in our plate. Now we've got the bell housing holes and the block holes. So these are pockets now that have fillets and everything in them to make them look good. And eventually you just end up with the part that has all the right holes. And then if you look, there's little features here, like these little chamfers. Cool. That the machinist can go and make sure that not only is it not sharp, but add some styling elements to it as well. And that's it. I probably have maybe,
how many hours?
Yeah, probably 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, but this isn't my first plate, you know, so I already kind of know where to go and have an idea of the workflow.
You know how to navigate the program well at this point, and
yeah, this is relatively simple too, because it's just 2.5D. There's no 3-dimensional contours or anything on it, and we're not connecting a bunch of stuff. It's just a shaped plate with several holes in it. I mean, the precision is what's really the most important thing, and that's where the roamer arm and being able to decipher that information and then be able to put it into the software. And then at that point, you're now relying on the machinist. So the machinist will not only give him the model for the part, but we'll also give him what we call a print. And the print it shows like where the tapped holes are, an overall dimension, like the largest dimensions, width and height, so we can get an idea of the piece of stock or the piece of material that he'll need to purchase to make this, the thickness of it, and then a couple of notes that I have up here, like the dowel pins that align the block to the motor plate and the motor plate to the bell housing are very precision, so we just note that they need to be reamed instead of just drilled with a drill bit.
Okay.
And this is like for what we're doing, like kind of hobbyist plus motorsport kind of level stuff. If we're doing aerospace or something, it'd be much more, you know, I'm sure there's engineers watching. This is a very simple print, but for what we're doing, this gets the job done, and we can get in here, be efficient, have a phone conversation with the guy that's doing the machining, and come out with a good part.
Yep. Glad to have you on board for one of the most important pieces of the puzzle. We're gonna email this off to Ferrari Steve down in San Diego at OMD. He's gonna cut it on his CNC, and as soon as we get it back, we can fit everything up, make sure it's all set, and get that thing fitted in the engine bay. Pumped. we got our motor plate back. It is looking sick. Big thanks to Steph for designing this baby, and also Ferrari Steve down in San Diego at OMD. He wrote the program and cut it on his CNC, and it came out sweet. Kind of looks like a cat, sorta. I mean, use your imagination. Dominic got all the nutserts in here, so we didn't want to rely on all the aluminum threads, especially mating the bell housing of the Hollinger, and also it being mated onto the back and being kind of that major support for the drivetrain. So we got the steel locking threaded inserts in pretty much every single hole that we're going to use, and those are just obviously more robust and a lot stronger than the aluminum threads. So we got our dowel pins here. Everything came out really good. We got some nice pockets cut in here to keep this thing really light. This is the back side. So this is where the bell housing is going to mount from Hollinger, and everything's recessed in here, so everything's nice and flat when it gets bolted on. I'll show you guys that in a second. But so we designed this in conjunction with Hollinger as a 5/8 plate so that they know how big the custom flywheel that they're making is going to be and how far back that's going to come out, along with the quill shaft and where the transmission is going to lay. They also made a custom spacer on the transmission that I'll show you guys here in a little bit on the Hollinger, so that all of this stuff fits up perfectly. The shifter fits right where we want it to, and the transmission tunnel and all of that. But right now, we're going to get this thing bolted up and make sure everything's all good. So it's really nice because all you have to do is locate the dowels on the back of the engine, and they are extremely tight in here, which is a good thing, but there we go. Put this little spacer on here. These two heads are actually offset, so we had to do, this one had to get milled out a little bit shorter to make up the difference, and we just have this little spacer to bring her home. So this is, I'm freaking pumped. This is like such a big piece of the puzzle that's finished now. After this, Dominic can start, we can kind of get this mocked up with the transmission on in the chassis, and Dominic can start making the mounts in the chassis for the motor plate. So you can see the two ends here. We saved these two holes. We haven't pushed these pins in, that's why they're still poking out. We just want to make sure everything fits all good and everything bolts on fine before we set those, because once you set them, that's pretty much it. You can't get them back out. So anyway, when we get, so there's two brackets that bolt off to the end of here that will then go to the chassis. It'll probably be like a nice like triangular situation with the Delrin bushing right here that'll bolt into the chassis. Kind of a three-piece situation like that, because we didn't know how this was going to fit into the chassis. So we wanted to take it one step at a time and get this on, see where everything fits, and then make the mounts in the chassis, and then make the brackets for that. So it's kind of a step-by-step process, and we didn't have, well, you know, we're not designing this car in any sort of software situation, so that's just the way we're doing it. Plus we got Dom specs, so it's gonna be good no matter what. So I'll wait to get the Hollinger transmission and bell housing all sandwiched together, and then we'll fit that thing on here and then place this thing in the engine bay and get to work, baby. Let's do it. All right, guys, this is one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle on this build that I am beyond stoked on, is partnering with Holinger Engineering for this transmission. This is the Holinger RD6 transmission. This is a 6-speed sequential, and I ran the same exact box in my Pro 8.6 car for 5 seasons, and the only thing we ever had to replace, I mean, 5 seasons on a 1,000 horsepower 2JZ drift car that sees the most amount of abuse I've ever put on to any chassis or car ever. The transmission, we would send it out every year to get inspected just to make sure everything was all good. And the only thing I ever had to replace was a reverse gear. And that was like on the 4th season. Just cause when you put it in a reverse, sometimes it grinds quite a bit, but it's just a testament to how strong and how amazing these transmissions are. So being able to partner with a company that has such an amazing product is phenomenal. This is like massive for this project. and I wanted nothing less than a Holinger RD6S for this thing. So beyond stoked, and they've been phenomenal to work with. They gave us access to their engineers. They're actually making a custom flywheel that's going on the Judd motor. They work with Tuerck'ing for the clutch that we're running. They made this custom spacer that's gonna go on this bell housing and their engine, so that this will kick the transmission back in the transmission tunnel, so the shifter is right where we need it. So the transmission actually sits really far back in the transmission tunnel, which is great because that gives us a better weight distribution, which is sweet. And so this is a LS bell housing. And the reason why they chose this bell housing is because we needed to figure out a starter situation with the clutch. Because we're not running it in a Formula car, you don't have that starter deal that you put in the back of the car with a gear on it and fire it up. So we just need a push button with an actual starter motor. So the best situation or solution that they had was utilizing their Holinger LS bell housing, working with Tuerck'ing to use one of their Supra starters, and they made it work. So we're actually gonna be putting a ring gear on the back of the clutch that Tuerck'ing made to work with this entire setup. So just phenomenal partner to have in this build, and really helped tackle a lot of the key hurdles that we were unsure about that were actually going to be very time consuming for Dominic and I to sort out with the already massive workload we have of fabrication and working on this thing. So it was great when they came on board and gave us the okay with the transmission, working with the engineers and starting to design and develop parts for us. So this thing just slides onto the transmission. Transmission slides onto the new motor plate that we just got, and we're styling, dude. We're just put this thing in the car, and we're gonna get this thing mounted finally in the engine bay. It's gonna be sick. Dom's already has his ideas on what he wants to do, and let's get to it. The engine is finally getting put in the Supra. Everything is sandwiched, bolted, tightened, ready to rock, and now we can finally place this engine in its home, right here in the Supra's engine bay. This is big, it's huge. This will bolt to here, and then we'll have this, we'll be able to stack little metal on here to kind of level it out as we want. But this will hold the front in place. We'll pick it up, we'll straighten the trans out, put that in place. But this basically is going to hold the front so that we can level it this way, front and back, get it exactly where Dom wants it, nice and level, flat, and start building some mounts. She's level. As you put more pieces of the puzzle together, you realize that more and more stuff probably isn't going to fit the way you want it to. The starter hits, the steering rack doesn't clear. Oh, the steering shaft for the column. That's gonna be a big diameter issue for the header build. So this little guy is not happy. So if we clearance this spot right here, we're then gonna get into the bolt. So probably just leave that bolt out of the equation. We got 5 others.
Yeah.
Little dimple.
Load that back too.
So the starter doesn't really clear that well. We have to position it down so that it does clear. All right, so I'm gonna show you guys how it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go like this, roughly. So that's how it's supposed to sit, so this is riding all the way into like the transmission tunnel support, which we don't want to cut out. So this has to angle down. So we want this to fit down here and that gives us a lot more clearance. So we're just trying to make that fit in this area right here, and we're getting there. And then we're still gonna have to do some clearancing on the chassis. So we'll probably still have to hammer in the trans tunnel right around here somewhere. Yo,
Perfect.
there it is.
So now,
Dom to the rescue.
let's punch the new holes.
Hole there, hole there.
That one's just gonna be really tight, but
And then we can still get the one in here.
still
It's
get
just
all
gonna be
three.
mega tight. Freaking A, nice job, dude. Gotta love when a plan comes together. Right, Koozie?
Hey, 2 thumbs up.
So this is gonna be the template off of the motor plate. This will be the right side. I'll fit it up so you guys kind of have a better idea what Dom's going for here. It's gonna be pretty cool though, pretty simple. So we had to do it offset from the motor plate. So this has to move forward in order to clear this kind of area here since it comes forward on us. So this is gonna bolt to here. And then I believe what the idea is, we're gonna have a bushing in here. And then in this area, since it's gonna be offset and pulled forward like this, around here, we're gonna drill through the chassis. Since this is a really thick part of the firewall right here, it's probably the most structurally sound, strongest part of this entire area of the car. So we're gonna drill through here and put a slug that's threaded and have this bolt into here. So this will be bolted solid straight to here to the motor plate on these 2 pickup points right here. So that's the game plan right now. Should work out really well. The only tough part is welding on the chassis in those spots. Is all the glue, or anybody would have a hard time welding that stuff. So we'll see how it goes when we start getting into this. But overall, I like the game plan. We had many different ideas, and that seems to be the best one. That'll be the strongest, and also leave a lot more room for the steering shaft, and also a little bit more room for the headers on this side, since the driver's side is gonna be really tough with all of the accessories down here and the steering arm coming down. So we're gonna have a bunch of clearance issues on this side for the header, which just make Dom's life a little more difficult, but here we go, dude. Let's do it. Let's get this motor mounted, baby. So this is basically just a guide for the drill bit to drill through the firewall, and that'll be our pilot hole to then use the hole saw. Trying to get this as straight as possible on an angled piece of metal. Definitely not the easiest, so Dom just cut this up in the lathe just to guide that drill bit in nice and straight, and hopefully make it through the hole, through the firewall, as straight as possible. And then we'll cut it with the hole saw, and then you can start making the slug with the threads in it, much like we did with the rear end, and we'll be one step closer. One step closer. All right, first hole done. Tore through 2.5 hole saws to do it. This steel is super hard, and it's just an angle cut. It's just chewing the crap out of the teeth on the hole saws. So thankfully we have one new one left. Hopefully they get the rest of the job done. We got 3 more cuts to do. I just dug all this foam out of the hole in hopes that Dom can weld it nice and clean and doesn't have any kind of shitty spitting welds on it. We'll see. I'm still gonna burn some fire in there, try to heat it up. Hopefully burn the rest of the glue off of that area. That's a nice fit. These are the support plates that are getting welded on to support the brackets that are then going to bolt to the motor plate. From that to that. It's pretty good. So these are essentially the motor mounts for the motor plate and for the Judd, obviously. So these are going to get welded into the chassis from the holes that Dom drilled through with the hole saw, and then he made these bosses that are threaded to M14-2. Some nice big metric hardware. So it should be rock solid, and then we'll be running a Delrin bushing. This will be the bracket that these will kind of slide on like that, and then so we'll run a Delrin bushing here in the bracket to try to take a little bit of the vibration out. Motor mounts prepped up, boys. This is it. Well, Dom still has to make a bracket for it, but still, motor mounts going in. Motor mount's going in for good. And motor is out for probably the 12th time again. But that means Dom gets to do some finish welding. So this is what Dominic is working on as the transmission bracket. And essentially we're just gonna have this bolt to the back of the transmission, and then this weld onto here, and then this bushing is basically just gonna slide, the transmission is gonna slide into this case that'll be welded into a different spot that will just hold it in place. So it's not really bolted in, it can kind of just slip in there as you put the transmission in. So it's basically a slip fit. It's gonna be a pin. All right, guys, this is it. This is gonna be the rear trans mount, the only trans mount we're gonna use. I think we're gonna have to cut this off so we can run our exhaust system through here on both sides. So we're gonna do a center rear mount, or it's mainly just gonna be a bushing. So the bushing slides over this, and then the bushing slides into receive another area. So we're gonna weld some plates on each side of the transmission tunnel here and here. And then Dom's gonna have something that comes across. We'll let him keep jamming, but it's coming together. There's only gonna be a few things MIG welded on this car, and this is actually gonna be one of them. The two plates for the support on the transmission mount are just tacked in right now. Dude, that thing looks sick. Here we go, sweet ass transmission mount finished. Dom spec as usual, looking sick.